Masato Shindo introduces his miserable existence as an on-site system engineer trapped in a black company, defined by brainwashing policies and endless unpaid overtime. The toxic workplace is a living hell where colleagues collapse from exhaustion, yet he faces persecution and pay cuts simply for not being a regular employee. Losing sight of the meaning of living, he has become numb to the desperate struggle, clinging to this job only because it was the sole offer he received. Despite the crushing fatigue, he straightens up in his chair, remembering that he has one crucial daily task he must fulfill before the day ends. He turns his attention to the silhouetted leaves of a plant he is nurturing in the darkness of his apartment. Gazing at his tomato plant with a genuine smile, he realizes this humble gardening hobby is the only thing keeping his sanity intact. While he dreams of a comfortable, self-sufficient lifestyle, the reality of his first year at the company left him utterly exhausted and drained. His mind wanders to an idyllic vision of harvesting bountiful red tomatoes under the sun, a sharp contrast to his gloomy office life. Enchanted by that agrarian dream, he started this home garden to reclaim a part of himself and noticed 2 days ago that one fruit was finally turning red. Wondering if the fruit will be tasty, he crouches down to harvest the tomato, only to stop in sudden confusion. Resting in his palm is a strange tomato marked with ominous, swirling black patterns that look nothing like a normal vegetable. Staring at the mutated produce, he asks himself in bewilderment what on earth is wrong with this tomato. Fearing it might be diseased and infect the other fruits, he impulsively swallows the strange tomato in a single gulp. He instantly questions his own idiocy for unconsciously eating something potentially harmful and waits anxiously for immediate side effects. His worst worries are realized as his consciousness rapidly fades into a swirling black void. Awakening in a lush forest instead of his home or a hospital, he looks around the woodland in total confusion. His confusion turns to shock when he notices a floating blue status window hovering right before his eyes. Reading the glitchy display, he is baffled to see his occupation listed as farmer instead of corporate slave, though the rest of the text is a garbled mess. Convincing himself this is an illusion caused by the sickly tomato, he notices the text mentioning a reincarnation fruit, and wonders if he has been reborn. Deciding that the toxic tomato must have caused severe hallucinations, he punches a nearby tree to test the reality of his surroundings. The sharp pain in his hand makes him question if this vivid setting is merely a coincidence or something undeniably real. Desperate for answers, he runs through the forest, striking different trees to test the consistency of this world. The forest echoes with the dull, rhythmic sounds of his impacts as he frantically interacts with the environment. Clutching his head in distress, he finally admits to himself that this strange situation might not be an illusion after all. Suddenly, a small, floating fairy creature appears before him. Startled by the sudden appearance of the entity, he stumbles backward onto the ground in shock. He stares in disbelief at the tiny, doll-sized girl hovering cheerfully in the air. A system message confirms he has tamed a dryad, while the creature excitedly sniffs him, claiming he smells like the reincarnation tree. Feeling suddenly refreshed, he realizes he can hear the creature's voice in his head and confirms that he has indeed tamed this dryad. He checks his status window again to find his stats have seemingly quadrupled to 20, making him wonder if these physical changes are real. As the dryad calls out to him as the reincarnation tree, he tries to explain he is human, but more fairies begin to appear. He clarifies that he is not a tree but merely ate a sickly mini tomato, though the fairy ignores him and clings to his arm. A massive swarm of dryads descends upon him, all shouting that he smells amazing and confirming the scent of the reincarnation tree. His vision is obscured by an endless stream of system notifications announcing that he is taming every single dryad that touches him. Looking at his updated status, he is floored to see his stats have exploded into uncountably large numbers denoted by scientific notation. He calculates that taming 122 dryads, each quadrupling his power, has resulted in a number with 68 digits. Despite the insane numbers, he decides to treat this as a persistent illusion for now and seeks to find other people or clues. Scanning his interface, he spots a flight skill and decides to test it to cover ground. He hesitates, worrying that with his astronomically high intelligence but low MP, a reckless jump might launch him into outer space. Realizing the danger of his own uncontrollable power, he stops to think of a safer way to travel. Masato freezes in shock as a sudden, violent force rushes toward him from the clearing's edge. A powerful gust of wind blasts through the forest, scattering the tiny dryads and nearly knocking Masato off his feet. He realizes the impact didn't hurt him, but he is bewildered by the sudden attack and the piercing screams of the dryads. Looking up, he identifies his attacker as a dragon with a chipped claw and injuries that suggest it struck him from the air behind. He wonders how to negotiate with the beast, realizing that riding on its back could be his ticket to human civilization. The dragon opens its maw to unleash a breath attack, forcing Masato to frantically search his skill list for a defensive countermeasure. Confident that his inflated stats will protect him from the worst, he decides he has no choice but to try preventing the breath attack entirely. As the dragon unleashes its power, Masato extends his hand and calmly casts Spell Break, shattering the magical assault. The dryad translates the dragon's roar of disbelief, confirming that Masato can now understand the creature's language. Masato realizes his tamed dryad provides automatic translation and, seeing the dragon's shock at having its breath nullified, decides to attempt a negotiation. He calls out to the dragon, stunning the beast with the revelation that a human can speak its tongue. Seizing the opportunity, Masato politely asks the shocked dragon if it would be willing to fly him through the sky. The dragon is insulted that a mere human would make a request of a noble creature and haughtily refuses to help. Enraged, the dragon prepares another attack, but Masato effortlessly cancels it with Spell Break while the beast shouts not to make it laugh. The dragon dives at him physically, but Masato blocks the strike with his bare hand and insists he just wants to help people. Realizing negotiations have failed, Masato concludes he has no choice but to find a suitable skill to force the dragon to listen. He justifies his use of force as self-defense and selects a skill, knowing that being ignored could cause trouble later. Worried that a powerful skill might incinerate the dragon and the forest, he chooses Nanofire, assuming it is the weakest option available. He warns the dragon that he has a plan and intends to test the lower power skills first before escalating. With a casual wave of his hand, Masato casts Nanofire to intimidate the creature. The dragon screams in terror, identifying the spell as the legendary Last Atomic Inferno despite its lowly name. Masato stares in bewildered silence, stunned by the catastrophic reaction to what was supposed to be a weak spell. The dragon trembles in terror, asking who Masato really is to be able to wield such apocalyptic magic. Masato checks his status and sees an insufficient MP notification, confusing him further as the dragon continues to rave about the legendary Inferno. He tries to correct the misunderstanding by explaining that he only used Nanofire, not the legendary spell the dragon fears. The dragon refuses to believe him, convinced that Masato cast the legendary spell without chanting, while Masato remains baffled. Masato realizes this misunderstanding is actually beneficial and decides to use the dragon's fear of the specific spell to his advantage. The dragon panics at the thought that if Nanofire produced that much power, the world would be in grave danger. Terrified, the dragon retracts its earlier insults and submits, rationalizing that Masato is simply disguising legendary magic as ordinary spells. Masato decides to go along with it as long as he gets a ride, noting that the dragon's attitude has shifted to excessive politeness. He asks again if he can be taken along, and the terrified dragon eagerly agrees to serve him wholeheartedly. Masato climbs aboard, impressed by the dragon's speed capabilities, and kindly tells it not to push itself too hard. The dragon signals their departure, and Masato prepares for takeoff on his new mount. As he grips the dragon's back to steady himself, a loud snap echoes through the air. A massive scale peels off in his hand, causing him to lose his grip and plummet from the dragon's back. The dragon whips its head around in shock as its passenger falls toward the forest below. Masato lands safely in the grass thanks to his high stats and apologizes, calling it a stroke of misfortune. The dragon frantically bows its head in apology for the loose scale, but Masato tells it to stop before it shakes the dryads off. The dragon explains the scale was loose and would have fallen off anyway, relieving Masato's guilt. As an apology, the dragon gives him the scale, and Masato happily accepts, thinking he can sell the valuable item. Masato scans his skill list and identifies storage as the solution to his problem, recalling that he had seen it listed there earlier. He chants item box and successfully stores the massive scale of the divine Crimson Dragon, confirming that he can store and retrieve items at will. With the heavy scale safely secured in his inventory, Masato declares that they are finally ready to depart. The dragon launches into the air, spreading its massive wings as it carries Masato high into the sky. Gazing down from the dragon's back, Masato spots a solitary farm situated in the outskirts of the region. Looking at the peaceful landscape, he feels a strong conviction that in this world, he might finally be able to live the life he has always longed for. A strange, intuitive feeling washes over him, confirming that his dream of a quiet life is within reach. As they approach the destination, Masato asks the dragon to hover near the town gate to avoid causing a panic, and the beast readily agrees. Masato thanks the dragon for saving him but worries about losing contact, to which the dragon graciously replies that he can ask for help anytime. The dryad surprises him by volunteering to stay with the dragon, revealing that she can facilitate remote communication between them. Masato agrees to the plan, deciding that the main dryad will accompany the dragon while the rest of the group disembarks here. The dryad gives a cheerful confirmation, ready to serve as the magical link between the human and the beast. Masato expresses his gratitude as the swarm of tiny dryads flies off the dragon to join him on the ground. Realizing the connection is already active, Masato asks the dryad to relay his final farewells to the dragon. They exchange warm goodbyes, with Masato promising to rely on the dragon's strength should the need ever arise in the future. Masato stands with his small companions, watching in silence as the dragon turns and flies away into the vast sky. Turning his back on the open horizon, he sets his sights on the town walls and begins his walk toward the gate. Back in the sky, the dragon asks the dryad if she wants to see a special trick it learned from observing the human. The dragon excitedly tells the small fairy to watch closely as it prepares to demonstrate its new ability. A blinding light envelopes the massive creature, shrinking its silhouette rapidly as it undergoes a magical metamorphosis. The light fades to reveal delicate human hands and long, flowing hair where claws and scales once were. The dragon reveals its new female human form, proudly asking the stunned dryad what she thinks of its human transformation magic. Masato sighs in relief as the dragon departs, but the gatekeepers immediately detain him, demanding to see his family crest because his speech sounds suspiciously noble. He realizes his language automatic translation skill is glitching his polite Japanese into high-class noble speech, causing a dangerous misunderstanding with the guards. Switching to a casual tone to sound more like a commoner, he asks if his speech is now acceptable, which the guards accept as much more natural. Masato explains that he scared the beast away with nano-fire, but the guards remain skeptical that a giant dragon would fear such a thing. While the guards debate the impossibility of a dragon fleeing from fire, Masato awkwardly asks how he can actually enter the town. A guard hands him a magical ring that acts as a GPS tracker, explaining it is required for public order until he obtains a proper guild ID. Masato asks if they can see the winged doll hovering near him, but the guard's confused reaction confirms the fairy is invisible to everyone else. He gazes out at the sprawling cityscape of the town he has finally gained access to, taking in the view of his new home. Following the guard's advice, he arrives at the Badila branch of the Agriculture Guild to secure his identification. Standing before the sign, he muses on the irony that fate has led a former corporate slave to an agriculture guild to seek a carefree life. The receptionist welcomes him warmly and confirms that an agriculture guild membership card will serve as sufficient ID for the town. She hands him a form to fill out, noting that the membership card will be extremely useful for his future endeavors. Addressing him respectfully as Shindo Masato-sama, she mentions that filling in his address is optional if he doesn't have one yet. With the paperwork complete, she presents him with his official Agriculture Guild membership card. She asks if his surname order is cultural, and he awkwardly confirms it, feeling embarrassed by her using his full name so politely. Changing the subject, Masato asks where to sell a dragon scale, and she directs him to the Adventurer Guild which handles pawn-like transactions. She informs him that a scale is worth at least 30,000 ether, and he inquires about the average monthly living cost for a single person. Calculating that 1 ether is roughly equivalent to 1 yen, he realizes his funds will be sufficient for the time being. At the Adventurer Guild, the staff is shocked he brought a dragon scale and prepares to measure its dragonium content to determine its value. The appraiser is stunned to find 0.0005 G of dragonium per milliliter, a density that indicates the scale came from a legendary ancient dragon. Masato wonders if that amount is small, but the appraiser connects the data to the infamous Flaming Crimson Dragon. The guild values the scale at a staggering 8.1 million ether, a sum Masato accepts calmly while the dryad panics at the absurdity. Returning to the Agriculture Guild with his fortune, Masato states his intent to pay the registration fee and purchase farmland. The receptionist advises him that purchasing costs 900,000 ether per area, whereas renting is a mere 54,000 annually, making rental the wiser start. Tempted by the freedom to experiment on a large field without commitment, Masato decides to rent 1 hectare of land. The receptionist opens a binder and points out specific plots that are suitable for the current season. Masato selects a plot to grow tomatoes and soybeans like he did in elementary school and pays the 220,000 ether fee. She warns him that managing such a large area alone is difficult, but he thanks her, confident in his abilities. Walking away, he assures the worried dryad that he has powerful connections to help with the heavy lifting. By evening, he has rented an apartment and looks out the window, resolving to start his farming life the very next day. The following morning, he travels to the outskirts of town to summon his helper away from prying eyes. The dragon descends from the sky with a cheerful greeting while Masato activates his enhanced vision to analyze the situation. The dragon reveals it used invisibility magic provided by the dryad to arrive unseen, and Masato asks to ride on its back. Pointing from the air, Masato identifies his rental plot and asks the dragon to mix the soil with a special ingredient. He observes the dragon utilizing a form of storage magic to retrieve the materials needed for the task. The dragon produces high-quality wood ashet made by burning remote grassland, which Masato intends to use for soil acidity adjustment. Masato is impressed by the utility of the ash, while the dryad points out that the dragon's dung will also serve as potent fertilizer. Directing the dragon to use its massive claws, Masato instructs it to plow the field and create furrows for planting. Watching the beast perform delicate agricultural work with its huge body, Masato admires its incredibly high dexterity stat. Satisfied with the progress, Masato cheerfully suggests they finish an even number of rows before taking a break for lunch. The dragoness complains about being addressed by her species name and suggests they properly introduce themselves to bridge the distance. Masato points out that her official name is Flaming Crimson Dragon, a fact he learned when he stored her scales in his inventory earlier. She argues that introducing herself is pointless if he won't give her a proper nickname, shyly admitting she wants a good one. She reveals she is female and demands a cute name, prompting Masato to playfully suggest Dora, followed by Eamon. Masato is surprised to learn she is a girl and quickly retracts the robot cat reference to search his mind for a suitable female name. He proposes the name Himari, hoping it suits her better than his previous joke. The dragoness blushes deeply, clearly touched and pleased by the sound of her new name. She asks for his name in return and compliments Masato Shindo as having a nice, unique ring to it. Himari eagerly accepts his instructions to help with farming, while Masato insists she drop the honorifics and just call him Masato. Masato wonders if his infinite dexterity allows him to sow seeds by simply tossing them into the air casually. He unleashes a handful of seeds with a casual flick of his wrist, testing his godlike stats on agriculture. Himari is flabbergasted to see the seeds land in perfect alignment and embed themselves into the soil with unnatural precision. Recovering from the shock, Himari declares that she and the dryads will handle the watering to show off their own skills. She channels her magical energy, confident that she can prove her worth to him immediately. Small rain clouds materialize instantly above the crops, demonstrating her impressive control over the weather. Masato activates his appraisal skill to analyze the mysterious clouds, curious about the magic behind the phenomenon. He is awestruck by the sheer scale of her power, realizing that manipulating the weather is a casual feat for a dragon. Job done. Masato thanks Himari and the dryads, telling them to rest but to call him anytime if they need anything. Left alone, Masato reflects that aside from the successful farming, he is finally living the peaceful life he always wanted. However, he admits to one gnawing dissatisfaction, a desperate craving for Japanese food that this world cannot satisfy. He laments that the local grocery stores lack rice, soy sauce, and miso, making it impossible to cook the meals he loves. Suddenly, inspiration strikes as he realizes there might be one specific dish he can create with the available ingredients. Masato and his slime companion arrive at the lush mountain forest to begin their search for specific culinary ingredients. He explains that while he could hunt wild boars here, his true objective is to gather wild vegetables for a special recipe. Masato details his plan to make chawanmushi, noting they already have eggs and only need to find fresh greens and mushrooms. A wild boar suddenly charges at them, but Masato casually stores the beast into his inventory using his storage magic. Himari points out a patch of hiratake mushrooms and mitsuba, praising the mountain for its bountiful offerings. Masato discovers a new cluster of vibrant red fungi and excitedly shouts that he has found something incredibly tasty. His excitement turns to alarm as a system window pops up to warn him that he is holding a deadly poisonous mushroom. Himari calmly identifies it as a fly agaric and dismisses the danger, calling the forest a delicious minefield. She assures the terrified Masato that with his high vitality stat, he can safely consume the toxin and enjoy the intense flavor. Misato learns that the mushroom contains ibotenic acid, which provides an umami punch 10 times stronger than normal glutamic acid. Intrigued by the promise of ultimate flavor, he decides to trust his stats and harvests the deadly fungi. Continuing his search, he finds a shiresu, a rare citrus fruit from the yuzu lineage known for its refreshing aroma. With his inventory full of high-quality ingredients, Misato declares the gathering mission a complete success. Himari expresses her eagerness to taste the final dish, and they begin the journey back to his home. Back at his kitchen, Misato rolls up his sleeves and declares that it is finally time to start the cooking process. He quickly clears the workspace and prepares his utensils, focused on converting the raw ingredients into a masterpiece. The table is lined with fresh eggs, processed boar meat, the citrus fruit, and the ominous fly agaric mushrooms. He uses his alchemy skill to instantly create a perfectly balanced seasoning mixture for the egg base. Misato carefully whisks the eggs with dashi broth and uses a spoon to remove every single air bubble for a silky texture. He pours the smooth egg mixture into cups that he has already filled with savory boar meat and mushrooms. Lacking a traditional steamer, he innovates by placing the cups into a frying pan filled with water. He realizes he lacks a lid, so he casts a barrier magic spell over the pan to trap the steam inside. After waiting for the appropriate time, he checks the liquid's transparency to confirm the custard is perfectly set. He garnishes the steaming yellow custard with a slice of zestful citrus and a sprig of green mitsuba. Misato smiles with satisfaction as he declares that his special chuanmeshi is finally complete. He presents the dish to Himari but pauses when he realizes a giant dragon cannot possibly use a small spoon. Misato awkwardly asks her to wait, wondering how they can possibly share this meal given their size difference. Himari suddenly glows with a blinding light, creating a mysterious silhouette that begins to shrink rapidly. The massive dragon form condenses and reshapes itself, the magical light pulsating with intense energy. The light fades to reveal a small figure standing amidst the sparkles of the transformation spell. Himari stands before him in her human transformation form, looking like a young girl with dragon horns. Misato blushes at her cute appearance but is relieved that they can now sit at the table together. She takes her seat across from him, eyes sparkling with anticipation for the human-style feast. They put their hands together in the traditional gesture of gratitude and say, "Itadakimasu," in unison. Misato quickly instructs her to squeeze the citrus over the hot custard before taking her first bite. Himari follows his advice and tastes the dish, her face lighting up with pure joy as she exclaims it is delicious. She marvels at the impossible smoothness of the egg custard and the refreshing crunch of the mitsuba. Misato finally scoops up a piece of the deadly fly agaric mushroom, bracing himself for the impact. He is instantly assaulted by an explosion of savory flavor so intense it nearly knocks him unconscious. His heart pounds violently in his chest as the overwhelming umami and the neurotoxin flood his senses. Misato watches Himari eat, relieved that his detox skill renders the food harmless so they can safely enjoy the meal. They share a joyful moment at the table, surrounded by sparkles as they savor the delicious taste of the food. Himari politely thanks Misato for the meal, admitting she is surprised that he knew how to prepare such an exquisite dish. She shyly asks if he can store an extra portion in his magic storage next time, and Misato happily agrees to make her happy. The next day, Misato reflects that with a little ingenuity, he can improve his culinary life in this world even further. Having finished his farm chores early, he heads into town to do some window shopping at a local gardening supplies store. He spots a bundle of 250 stakes priced at 7,000 ether and winces at the expense, knowing he will need them in the future. Misato considers the size of his field and wonders if he can reduce the considerable cost by making the stakes himself. Suddenly, Carol from the Agriculture Guild greets him cheerfully, recognizing him from their previous encounter. She explains that she is shopping for her home garden on her day off and politely offers to show him around the store. Carol leads the way through the aisles, asking his opinion on items while Misato muses that this store might hold unknown surprises. She points out a magical barrier tool that repels weeds and a sprinkler system designed for widespread commercial watering. Misato mentally dismisses the sprinkler, deciding that his tamed dryad's rain of blessings is sufficient for his needs. Carol notices his distant gaze, prompting Misato to realize that she cannot see the invisible dryad clinging to his arm. He is shocked to find bottles of liquid fertilizer on the shelf, confused as to why such a modern product exists in this fantasy world. He questions the logistics, knowing that the industrial Haber-Bosch process required to create synthetic fertilizer should not have been invented yet. Carol corrects his assumption, explaining that liquid fertilizer isn't manufactured in factories but is actually a drop item found in dungeons. She reveals that growth enhancers can also be obtained there, piquing Misato's interest in these dungeon-derived agricultural items. Misato examines a can of growth promotion costing 5,000 ether, which claims to speed up crop growth on 1 acre by 5 days. He is visibly disappointed that it only accelerates growth for harvest season rather than providing an instant harvest. Misato questions the value, arguing that paying 5,000 ether for such a limited effect seems incredibly expensive and not cost-effective. Carol notes that usually only wealthy farmers can afford it, but suggests that Misato might be in a different financial league. She implies that since he was strong enough to obtain a dragon scale, he could simply gather the items from a dungeon himself. Carol smiles knowingly, confident that her suggestion has planted a new idea in Misato's mind. Misato prepares for the dungeon dive by activating his strengthening and sharpening skills, determined to find the items he needs for his garden. With only 10 MP to spare, he realizes he must conserve magic and rely entirely on physical attacks to secure the growth-promoting agents. He explains to a confused Himari that he brought her along as a safety benchmark, reasoning that if she can handle the enemies, he can safely hunt them too. Himari reminds him of her status as a powerful dragon, while Misato cautiously asks if there are any dangerous monsters on this floor they should avoid. Ignoring standard dungeon progression, Misato activates his master-level architecture skill to visualize and construct a shortcut through the dungeon structure. He muses that an elevator would be convenient, casually manipulating the dungeon's layout to suit his needs. The entire dungeon shakes violently as his construction skill takes effect, startling Himari, who panics at the sudden tremors. A massive mechanical noise rumbles from beneath the ground, signaling the arrival of his architectural creation. The doors slide open to reveal a fully functional modern elevator, complete with a digital floor display panel. Misato casually invites the stunned dragon girl inside, introducing his creation as a simple application of his master-level architecture skill. Himari screams in disbelief that he has installed a modern lift inside a fantasy dungeon, completely appending common sense. They ride the lift comfortably down to the 80th floor, where a massive bear monster immediately confronts them as the doors open. Misato calmly asks if the beast is stronger than her, to which Himari confidently replies that the monster is not a threat at all. Before Himari can finish explaining that there is only a 1% chance to kill it in its sleep, Misato draws his sword with blinding speed. The bear is instantly bisected by his slash before it can even react, leaving Himari dumbfounded by the instant kill. Misato explains he simply struck its weak point as a wyvern circulation card drops from the fading corpse. He asks if this specific drop is normal, and Himari recovers enough to explain that monsters of the same type always drop the same items. He immediately engages a crocodile monster next, ignoring Himari's frantic warning that he is moving too fast for a beginner. The monster drops a primate vinyl house, a greenhouse item that allows for the cultivation of any plant regardless of the environment. Himari excitedly asks if this magical greenhouse can cultivate alchemy, a rare mushroom known for its medicinal properties. She reveals that alchemy is the only cure for white mage's disease, a deadly epidemic that currently afflicts her mother. With tears in her eyes, she explains that she had almost given up hope of saving her mother, who has only 300 years left to live. Misato smiles and promises to grow the mushrooms as quickly as possible to help her save her mother. They realize that while spores are common, they desperately need a growth accelerator to make the cultivation feasible. A mimic chest lunges at them with a giant tongue, but they press on, determined to find the specific item they need. Misato effortlessly slices through the mimic, destroying the trap monster in a single smooth motion. The mimic drops a dubbing card capable of replicating items, but they realize they must venture deeper to find the accelerator. They descend to the 81st floor, prepared to face even more dangerous enemies in their search for the growth item. Misato unleashes a flurry of sword strikes, cutting through the darkness and the dungeon's inhabitants with ease. A can-shaped item finally drops from a defeated enemy, bearing the label, Growth Promotion, on its side. Himari and Misato stare at the item in shock, hardly daring to believe they found exactly what they were looking for. Misato confirms it is indeed the growth accelerator he saw in the store, which will allow him to harvest his crops instantly. Their celebration is interrupted by a glass lizard that expands its body to scatter dangerous glass fragments in an explosive shedding attack. Masato hesitates, wondering if his blade can cut through the hardened glass body or if he needs to set a trap. Realizing he has no other option, he decides to face the explosive threat head-on with his sword. He successfully shatters the enemy, leaving Himari impressed by the absurd sharpness of his blade as he wipes the sweat from his brow. With the mission complete, Masato decides to head back to town, noting that the dropped item, a glass shoe, is useless to him. Himari waves goodbye, asking him to call her as soon as the vinyl house is ready for the mushroom cultivation. Back in town, Masato walks toward the Adventurers Guild, planning to sell the glass shoe he obtained from the lizard. The receptionist, remembering him as the dragon scale supplier, anticipates he has brought another legendary item like the momentary glitter of Cinderella. Masato shows the mysterious item to the guild receptionist, telling her he needs it appraised in the back room. The receptionist screams in shock, identifying the item as a legendary, momentary glitter of Cinderella, and demanding to know where he found it. Masato calmly states he found it on the 81st floor, and the receptionist is stunned when her lie detector confirms he is telling the truth. The guild master bursts into the room in a panic, shouting in disbelief at the mention of the 81st floor. He confronts Masato about the unknown structure, report, realizing this young man is the one who explored the dungeon's depths. Masato casually admits he built the structure, explaining that it is just an elevator he made because moving between floors was troublesome. He offers to delete it if it's a problem, but the staff are flabbergasted that such an outrageous feat was done for such ordinary motives. Masato arranges to pay his fees and suggests opening the elevator to the public for an annual license fee of 3 million ether. Flush with new funds, Masato decides to go shopping and casually checks his status window on the way. He notes that his MP has risen despite his attempts to live a normal life, realizing he has enough power to commute to his fields using magic. Back at the farm, Masato wonders how to spread the growth-promoting agent, but the dryads cheerfully offer to mix it into their clouds. He pours the liquid into a strange inlet port on the cloud, watching it drip down into the magical mass. A magical rain showers down from the cloud, drenching the fields in the growth-enhancing solution. Masato watches in awe as the crops sprout and mature instantly, describing the process as fast-forwarding a video. Realizing he cannot set up support pillars in time for the rapid growth, he casts gravity manipulation to hold the plants upright. With the tomatoes fully ripe and soybeans ready as edamame, he decides to harvest half the crop immediately. He gives the signal to start, and the enthusiastic dryads cheer, "Okay," as they swarm the field. The tiny fairies fly through the air, carrying massive tomatoes that dwarf their small bodies. Masato reveals he splurged on more agent and instructs the dryads to apply it individually to the remaining plants. The dryads eagerly accept the task, shouting their agreement in unison. Masato smiles as he watches the hardworking fairies tend to the crops with joy. He notes the item has a 4-day cooldown, meaning they must wait before the next application. He tells the dryads they will continue the rest of the work after the cooldown passes. Time skips forward as the narrative moves 4 days into the future. The harvest is finally complete, and the dryads celebrate their hard work with a cheerful yawai. The scene shifts to the town where the massive harvest is brought in for processing. Masato checks the final weights, noting nearly a ton of soybeans and a staggering 29 tons of tomatoes. Curious about the quality, he activates appraisal on the crops and is immediately shocked by the results. Masato bites into the freshly harvested tomato and excitedly proclaims that the taste is absolute top-notch quality just as appraised. He plans to keep a personal stash and store the massive remainder in his item box to preserve its freshness for sale. Carol stares in disbelief as Masato reveals a staggering harvest of 29 tons of tomatoes and 2 tons of beans. She struggles to comprehend how a beginner achieved such an impossible yield in merely 2 weeks, though Masato credits her advice. Masato explains he used a growth accelerator to speed up the process by 3 months, leaving Carol confused by the item's name. Ignoring her confusion, he suggests they sort the crops, though Carol clearly wants to pretend she didn't hear his absurd claim. He activates his sorting telekinesis skill, causing the vegetables to levitate into the air with a magical glow. Carol watches in awe as the crops automatically classify themselves and fly neatly into their respective crates. She is stunned to verify that there are 0 diseases or imperfect grains among the entire harvest. Trembling, she asks if these are legendary crops known for granting eternal youth or curing eyesight. Carol collapses from the shock, leaving Masato to wonder if he should call an appraiser or a doctor. An elderly appraiser examines the produce and shrieks that this is undeniably a legendary vegetable. Masato tries to explain they are just ordinary seeds, but the old man grabs him and demands to know how he grew them. Carol recovers enough to intervene, confirming that she personally sold him standard seeds just recently. Masato realizes the legendary status must be a result of the dryads lending their magical power to the soil. The appraiser laughs off the idea of dryads helping humans, dismissing the fairy tale creatures as a myth. Masato privately connects the phenomenon to the blessing of the dryad rain that fell on his fields. The system confirms the rain supercharged the plants, enhancing nutrients like lycopene and isoflavones to supernatural levels. Carol explains they need an exclusive merchant because these life-extending items are too dangerous for general circulation. She warns that if the producer's identity leaks, unsavory individuals will target him for such valuable crops. Masato agrees to the arrangement, trusting the guild to handle the security and distribution to protect his privacy. They arrive at the Agriculture Guild, where Carol prepares to introduce him to a merchant with the utmost trust. She spots the perfect candidate and calls out to a man named Cole. A mysterious man introduces himself as Cole, the exclusive traveling merchant who possesses the mystification skill. He reveals his dark past where he awakened his mist powers while being tortured by a criminal organization targeting his sister. Cole presents a rare card to Masato, explaining that he acquired it during his days as a distributor. Masato accepts the card as a token of friendship while introducing himself to his new business partner. The appraiser and Carol scream in terror upon realizing Masato is holding a legendary wyvern circulation card. They explain that only 5 of these ancient relics exist and they are typically reserved for national emergencies. To ensure Cole's safety during transport, they decide to have one of Masato's dryads accompany him as a bodyguard. They finalize the contract with a lucrative split of 75% for Masato, 20% for Cole, and 5% for the guild. With business concluded, Masato shocks Carol again by asking to buy wheat seeds entirely out of season. He declares his intention to eat tempura and plans to force the wheat to grow instantly using growth stimulants. Returning to his land, Masato tells Himari he needs to tidy up the field to plant the medicinal mushrooms. The little dryad offers to help with a special rain, promising to deal with the withered plants immediately. Masato watches in horror as the falling rain causes the leftover plant matter to melt into sludge. The dryad proudly explains she instantly composted the waste, while Masato marvels at the terrifying efficiency of her magic. Himari notes the field is perfectly clean, and Masato prepares to install his next major upgrade. He takes out the primate vinyl house item he obtained from the dungeon and wonders if he should set it up immediately. The massive greenhouse materializes on the field with a cartoony sound effect, stunning Himari with its sudden appearance. Masato locates a rock with alhilda mushroom spores attached and asks Himari to confirm their identity. He activates his microscope skill to magnify the tiny spores, wondering if these specks are truly the key to their cultivation efforts. Himari confirms their existence with excitement, and Masato realizes they simply need to cultivate the spores attached to this specific rock. He issues a command to the system to designate the spores on the rock as the target for cultivation. The system acknowledges the request and begins adjusting the environment, instructing the pair to wait outside for safety. A dark, ominous change overtakes the greenhouse interior as the climate shifts rapidly to match the mushroom's needs. Masato observes the terrifying transformation, noting that the facility now resembles a toxic gas chamber filled with high heat. He realizes this deadly atmosphere is the natural habitat of the alhilda mushrooms and knows he must enter it to apply the stimulant. Himari trembles in fear for his safety, asking where his baseless confidence comes from, but Masato remains undeterred. To demonstrate the danger, Masato decides to test the environment by throwing an object inside first. The object is instantly crushed and obliterated by the intense gravitational pressure and corrosive atmosphere within. Masato grimaces at the destruction, analyzing that the high temperature and pressure make the room unsurvivable for humans. He strategizes to survive by using HP lock to preserve his last hit point and auto-cure for constant regeneration. Himari watches anxiously as Masato steps toward the death trap, warning him to be extremely careful. He steps inside and is immediately hit by the crushing force, his body screaming under the immense strain. The corrosive gas instantly begins destroying his body and shields, proving the environment is a completely hostile hellscape. Masato realizes he cannot relax for a single second, wondering if his survival is due to his support skills or his astronomical vitality. Knowing he has a strict time limit before he runs out of breath in the oxygen-free room, he frantically searches for the spores. He spots the target spores using his microscope skill and confirms their location amidst the deadly haze. Wasting no time, he applies the growth stimulant to the spores to accelerate their development. He notices other natural spores growing nearby and decides to apply the stimulant to them as well for a 3-month boost. Misato figures he might as well cultivate the natural ones since he is already there, while Himari sighs in relief from outside. Safely back outside, Misato asks how long the mushrooms usually take to fruit, and Himari estimates about 1 year and 3 months. Himari calculates that with the stimulant reducing the time, the remaining wait is cut down to just 4 cycles. She is shocked to realize this means they can harvest in just 16 days, staring at Misato in disbelief. Misato smiles confidentially, happy that they will be able to heal Himari's mother much sooner than expected. Himari blushes with emotion, overwhelmed by the sudden hope that her mother might actually be saved. She excitedly promises to prepare the medicinal ingredients immediately and wait for the harvest. Her face beams with determination as she declares her readiness to help save her mother. The scene shifts to a quiet, snowy landscape, emphasizing the passage of time in the silent forest. A female figure covers her mouth, her expression pained and fragile as she struggles to maintain her composure. A harsh cough echoes in the silence as the narration reveals that the dragon lies critically ill. Misato and Himari arrive at the freezing Vialang Sea, seeking the coldest waters to find premium ingredients for his tempura. Shivering in the cold, he thanks Himari for the guidance and prepares to start the squid chop operation. Having finished his wheat planting and waiting for the medicinal mushrooms, Misato decides to gather assorted seafood to complete his tempura meal. Standing atop the frozen ocean, he wonders if he should simply punch through the surface since the ice is too thick to see the water. With a casual strike, he shatters the thick ice layer, sending massive shards flying in every direction. Himari screams in shock that he effortlessly destroyed the perpetual sea ice, a feat never achieved in recorded history, while Misato just looks for fish. As he stares into the water, a dragon notes that no one has ever fished in this dangerous sea before. The water surface erupts violently as something massive rises from the depths to confront the intruder. Misato stares in confusion at the colossal appendages emerging from the waves, realizing they are gigantic squid tentacles. He is suddenly hoisted high into the air by the beast, noting with a sweat drop that the creature is absurdly large. Realizing the monster intends to eat him, he calmly activates his flight skill to escape the grasp of the giant squid. Hovering in the air, he faces the massive kraken-like monster and cheerfully remarks that it is quite a catch. Smiling with confidence, he decides that since he has already encountered the beast, he might as well reel it in for dinner. The giant squid lashes out with its tentacles, but Misato effortlessly dodges the high-speed attacks in midair. He draws his sword and counters, slashing through the incoming attacks with precision. Misato calculates that chopping the base of the squid's head should paralyze its nerves and neutralize the threat. Unsure if the technique will work on a monster of this magnitude, he swings his blade with full force to test his theory. The giant squid instantly stiffens and turns white, its movements completely halted by the precise nerve strike. Misato lands gracefully on the ice, preparing to finish the harvest now that the beast is immobilized. He activates his storage magic, attempting to stow the massive creature away in his inventory. The colossal squid is sucked into the dimensional pocket, vanishing from the sea in an instant. Himari is confused how he stored a living creature, but Misato asks her to hold on while he explains. He reasons that the nerve paralysis put the squid in a state of pseudo-death, tricking the system into treating it as a corpse. Himari laments that he is fighting against common sense itself, having fundamentally changed the rules of storage magic. Eager to continue, Misato dives underwater using his flight skill to search for more fish varieties. He marvels at the beautiful underwater scenery, surrounded by countless schools of fish swimming in the clear water. Scanning the area, he identifies a school of horse mackerel swimming among the smaller smelt. He decides to catch a few of them to add variety to his seafood platter. Suddenly, a massive shadow approaches, and Misato reacts with surprise as a giant tuna swims into view. He identifies the prize catch as a tuna and prepares to intercept it. Timing his movement perfectly, he lunges forward to capture the high-quality fish. He strikes with blinding speed, securing the tuna in a single fluid motion. Satisfied with the catch, he stores the tuna and looks around for more ingredients to complete his menu. A large shrimp swims past him with a swish, catching his attention immediately. Misato's eyes light up as he decides he absolutely needs shrimp tempura to complete the meal. Emerging from the water with a bountiful harvest, he asks Himari to guide him to a market where he can get the fish processed. They arrive at the bustling harbor market, looking for a shop that can handle his massive haul. A worker at a stall coldly rejects him, stating they only deal with loyal fishing boats and do not offer processing services. Misato turns to leave without a fuss, but the store manager suddenly shouts for him to wait, eyeing the catch. The manager stares in awe at the fish, trembling at the outstanding freshness and unseen level of fattiness. The shopkeeper hesitates, citing a strict policy of sourcing only from loyal clients despite the fish's obviously superior quality. He admits the catch must come from an exceptional fishing ground and offers to waive the processing fee if the quantity is sufficient. Misato asks if they can process other fish from the same location, shocking the workers with the implication of more catch. The workers recoil in terror as a colossal tentacle emerges, causing one man to stammer that the squid is impossibly large. The shopkeeper notices Himari's amber eyes and bluish ears, realizing she is not human, but quickly pivots to ask Misato to show the storage. Misato pulls out the massive carcass, causing the workers to scream that it is a legendary kraken. Himari proudly explains it is a legendary monster, while Misato casually mentions he just chopped and paralyzed it, making the workers question his humanity. Himari notes that a mere human could never defeat such a beast, but Misato dismisses the encounter as just catching a big squid. The boss's eyes light up with greed for the delicacy, and he eagerly insists on processing the kraken for free. Misato hands over the massive catch, the sheer weight of the legendary beast causing the facility to tremble. The boss finishes the job and generously offers to process the smelt and mackerel on the house as a bonus. Job done, Misato asks Himari to fly him to the nearby sea so he can perform a specific task. Himari transforms into her dragon form and lands on the beach, asking what they are doing there. Misato stands before the vast ocean, preparing to unleash his magic on the water for a specific extraction. The sea ripples as magical energy gathers around his hand, churning the waves as he focuses his power. He activates Advanced Alchemy to manipulate the seawater on a molecular level, creating a glowing transmutation circle in the air. Himari watches in resignation, wondering what outrageous feat he is attempting now and knowing its typical Misato behavior. A sphere of pure white substance materializes, and Himari screams in disbelief that he used high-level alchemy just to make salt. She scolds him for wasting a legendary skill on groceries, but Misato argues he didn't feel safe carrying cash to buy it. Misato muses that since he has the salt, he needs other ingredients, while Himari sighs at his endless food obsession. He turns to Himari and asks her to go gather hops for him, prompting her to question his plans. Misato declares with determination that he has something special he wants to make using the new ingredients. Misato accepts the delivery of hops from the merchant, thanking him for providing the crucial ingredient needed for his next project. He admits to a skeptical Himari with a grin that he is indeed planning to create something completely outrageous once again. Laying out his gathered materials, he reveals his grand plan to prepare a feast of tempura paired with freshly brewed beer. Himari stares at the mental image of the savory golden food, drooling uncontrollably at the mere thought of the meal. She excitedly demands to taste it immediately, but Misato chuckles and tells her to slow down because preparations aren't finished. He interrupts her whining to declare there is still one more vital step he needs to complete before he can start cooking. Misato pulls out the rare dubbing card, prompting a confused Himari to ask what exactly he intends to duplicate. He targets the primate vinyl house and creates a perfect copy, explaining that he needs the extra space for a specific crop. Inside the new greenhouse, he plants a seed and reveals it is the raw ingredient needed to create authentic soy sauce. Misato applies a concentrated growth formula with a dropper, creating a squishing sound as the liquid hits the soil. The crop explodes out of the ground instantly, and he explains to the shocked dragon girl that these are soybeans for the sauce. He asks Himari to accompany him to town for a bit, leaving her confused about how these beans will turn into liquid seasoning. They arrive at a real estate agency in town, where the staff welcomes them to inquire about their property needs. Misato shocks the realtor by ignoring the housing catalog and demanding to purchase a vacant lot for building a factory. The realtor informs him the land costs 3.2 million ethers and asks if he wants to appoint a guarantor or use collateral. Realizing he lacks the liquid cash for such a massive purchase, Misato sweats nervously and admits he cannot pay up front. He pulls out a card to offer as collateral, causing the realtor's eyes to widen in absolute disbelief. The staff screams in terror upon realizing he is casually offering the legendary Wyvern Circulation card for a simple land deal. Himari looks smugly proud of the chaos her master causes, while Masato wonders where he should store such a dangerous item. Standing before the empty lot, Masato prepares to show Himari exactly how he will manufacture the seasoning from scratch. He raises his hand and activates his master-level architecture skill to construct the industrial facility in a single instant. A blinding light envelopes the town as a massive, multi-story factory materializes out of thin air to fill the vacant lot. Masato details the factory's internal logic, explaining how the floors are dedicated to dehusking, milling, and processing the soy sauce. He smiles confidently, noting that he perfectly recalls the necessary equipment and layout from his job hunting days at food manufacturers. The massive industrial complex towers over the street, completing his absurd plan to industrialize condiment production in a fantasy world. Himari stares blankly at the structure, declaring that she is so used to his insanity that nothing can shock her anymore. Suddenly, a deafening boom echoes through the air as the massive building settles, shaking the ground and proving her wrong. Himari screams as she looks up at the towering, modern factory building that defies all fantasy world common sense. Masato wipes his hands and announces that the structural preparations are complete, oblivious to the Dragon Girl's panic. He tells her they will return to the factory in 2 days after harvesting the wheat to begin the production process. Before leaving, he invites her to check on the progress of her mother's medicine, knowing it will cheer her up. They enter the original vinyl house, where Masato carefully applies the 3rd dose of the growth stimulant to the fungi. Himari gasps in delight as she sees the Alhilda mushroom has grown large enough to be clearly visible to the naked eye. She clutches her chest and whispers a tearful message to her mother, asking her to hold on just a little longer. Masato suggests they check on the wheat field next to see if the main crop is ready for the harvest. Standing in the field, he asks the floating dryad to perform a special rain spell infused with his growth stimulant. A magical downpour covers the crop, accelerating the final stages of growth in a matter of seconds. Masato smiles as the wheat turns golden brown, and he activates his appraisal skill to verify the quality. The system identifies it as super low-glycemic wheat, a miracle crop that won't spike blood sugar, making it safe for diabetics. With the legendary ingredients ready, Masato declares they will finally use the factory's mysterious machine to process the harvest. The massive machine hums on the first floor, identified by a plate as the unit for dehydrating and dehusking wheat. Himari asks if they just need to dump the wheat inside, and Masato confirms the automated system will handle the rest instantly. Masato announces the process is already complete as he stores the output, leaving Himari bewildered by the concept of automation. Checking the results, Masato is floored to see 7.3 tons of wheat, realizing the dryad's influence pushed the harvest far beyond natural limits. He rallies the group to continue the operation, ordering them to feed the harvested ingredients into the machines on the upper floors. As the facility fills with the sound of whirring gears, Himari asks if they really just have to wait, and Masato confirms their work is done. Himari looks at him with pure confusion, begging for an explanation as she questions if this industrial process is truly just for making food. Masato breaks down the factory's functions, listing floor-by-floor production lines for beer, soy sauce, and flour that rival modern industry. Himari screams at the absurdity of it all, unable to comprehend how a simple cooking task escalated into the construction of a revolutionary factory. Masato laughs off her concern, advising her to ignore the insane process and simply look forward to the end product. He grins with anticipation, promising that all this over-the-top effort will result in the most incredibly delicious food she has ever tasted. Himari eagerly asks if the food is finally ready, utensils already in hand, but Masato hesitates. Masato crushes her spirits by revealing the soy sauce still needs to mature for a full year before it can be consumed. Seeing her utter despair, Masato smiles and reveals he found a skill that might solve their time problem immediately. He stands before the fermentation tank and activates his time manipulation skill. The metallic tank glows as the magic takes effect, accelerating the process inside. Himari panics when the liquid turns black, convinced that he has rotted the entire batch. Masato calms her down, explaining that the dark color is actually proof that the soy sauce has successfully matured. Himari argues that time manipulation is supposed to stop movement for a set time, not skip years into the future. Masato ignores the laws of magic, noting that he somehow managed to skip a year regardless of common sense. Himari realizes this power makes his growth accelerants obsolete, but Masato tells her not to be so surprised. A diagram explains that while growth accelerant speeds up development, time manipulation merely ages the plant until it withers. Masato bottles some unboiled nama shoyu, explaining that the raw version has a unique, delicious flavor. He boils the remaining mixture in a large pot to create the standard soy sauce they need for cooking. Himari tries to rush to the table to eat, but Masato stops her again. He catches the eager dragon girl, warning her that she is getting ahead of herself. Masato states he has a few more things to prepare outside before they can truly begin the feast. He steps outside the factory and raises his hand to cast another spell. Masato activates Advanced Alchemy to create the necessary containers for his next project. The fairy gasps in amazement as a multitude of glass bottles suddenly materialize in the air. Masato holds up a bottle, explaining they will fill them with the product made on the 4th floor. He uses time manipulation on the fermentation tanks to instantly convert the wort into young beer. He explains the process of filtering the brew and bottling the liquid to finish the production. Masato presents the finished beer to Himari, leaving her in awe of the golden drink she has never seen before. He grabs a bag of ingredients, announcing that the next step is collecting flour from the 2nd floor. Returning to the kitchen, he apologizes for the wait and declares the cooking session open. Masato is surprised to see Himari has changed into an apron for the occasion. She beams at him, explaining she wants to witness the secrets of his premium cooking up close. Masato prepares the batter with cold water and flour to coat the smelt, horse mackerel, and kraken. He shows her how to sprinkle the batter into the hot oil by hand to create crispy fried flowers on the tempura. While the tempura fries, he serves a bowl of boiled edamame as an appetizer. He arranges the sashimi on a plate, deciding to serve only what they can eat immediately since the chefs cut plenty. Masato prepares the final touch for the massive feast spread out on the table. He sprays spirit medium over the dishes so the spirits can physically eat the food with them. Himari drools over the magnificent spread, marveling at the variety of foods she has never seen before. They put their hands together in thanks and cheerfully shout, "Iftidikum," to start the feast. Masato and Himari take their first bites, savoring the fruits of their labor. Himari is ecstatic, declaring that the sashimi stands far above anything she has ever tasted. She dips the fish in the soy sauce, praising the perfect salty-sweet balance of the seasoning. Masato sighs as she calls it moldy koji extract, correcting her that it is called soy sauce. He bites into the kraken tempura, smiling with relief that the monster meat is actually delicious. Himari marvels at the exquisite taste of the sashimi and tempura, never imagining such dishes existed, but Masato smiles and reveals there is still one more featured item to come today. Himari looks confused by the announcement, but Masato turns his attention away to introduce the final surprise. With a gleam in his eye, Masato produces a bottle, declaring that this specific item is exactly what he has been waiting for. He proudly presents the chilled bottle and glasses, the condensation glistening as he prepares to serve the main event. Himari stares at the frothy golden liquid in awe, noting that it is the first time she has ever witnessed such a foamy beverage. Masato explains that the alcoholic drink is called beer and enthusiastically claims that pairing it with edamame is the absolute best way to enjoy it. Overcoming her hesitation, Himari lifts the glass to her lips and takes a tentative sip of the unknown brew. Her eyes light up with pure delight as she exclaims how thirst-quenching and incredibly delicious the unique drink truly is. Masato credits the perfect taste and smell to the hops Himari collected, prompting her to eagerly offer to gather even more for planting in the field. Himari joyfully notes how the beans melt on her tongue while Masato agrees that the edamame's mellow flavor is delicious, and neither can stop eating. Feeling deeply satisfied with his decision to build and stock the factory, Masato relaxes while enjoying the premium beer and delicious food with his companion. While Himari excuses herself to head out, a tipsy Masato happily reflects on his luck to be able to drink beer and eat such food even after transmigrating. Himari watches in shock as Masato spectacularly rolls straight into his bed, completely overcome by the alcohol and comfort. Drifting off to sleep, he smiles at the realization that this blissful existence was completely unthinkable during his days as a corporate worker. Under the moonlight, Himari calls out to him in vain, but he remains lost in a state of pure, uninterrupted bliss. Masato wakes up feeling completely refreshed, relieved that his high vitality stat has successfully prevented any hangover from the previous night's drinking. He realizes Himari is missing from the room but shrugs it off, noting that his healing magic can cure any headache instantly. A flashback reveals that the energetic dragon girl flew out late last night to collect more hops for their brewing project. She cheerfully told him to leave the cleanup to her before flying off, eager to gather ingredients despite the late hour. Masato worries about her working through the night without sleep, wondering if dragons simply have limitless stamina compared to humans. Impressed by her dedication, he grabs a bottle of his new product and decides to match her enthusiasm with his own work. He plans to sell the new beer and soy sauce to the guild alongside his crops, confident they will be a hit in this world. Arriving at the agriculture guild, he is interrupted when Carol suddenly asks him to come to the back for a private conversation. He follows her nervously, wondering what serious matter she needs to discuss with him in such a secretive manner. Carol reveals that the Adventurers Guild has found a buyer for the Cinderella Clinic glass shoe he secretly sold earlier. She drops the bombshell that the item sold for a staggering 27.4 million ether, causing Masato to freeze in shock. Carol demands to know what kind of legendary item he sold to earn a fortune that she has never seen in her entire life. Masato explains he used the Agriculture Guild as a proxy because he wanted to keep his identity hidden from the nobles seeking the item. He emphasizes that he trusts her to uphold this confidentiality, as dealing with aristocratic restrictions feels too burdensome for him. Carol blushes at his expression of trust and agrees to handle the situation, though she is still reeling from the amount. They proceed to the warehouse to inspect his produce, with Masato stating his original intent was just to sell his crops. The elderly appraiser's jaw drops as he inspects the wheat, unable to believe the quality of the harvest before him. He stares at the grain in silence, overwhelmed by the magical properties emanating from the pile. Carol and the appraiser demand to know if these are truly normal seeds, but Masato awkwardly tries to deflect their suspicion. They conclude that the legendary dryads must be lending their power to him, validating the existence of the mythical fairies. The appraiser insists they must strictly manage these diabetes-safe wheat crops and sell them exclusively through trusted merchants like Cole. Masato agrees but insists that he wants Cole to be able to use the products without any reservation once he returns. To secure the valuable goods, Masato casually hands over 9 legendary Wyvern circulation cards to use as vault keys. Changing the subject from their shock, he offers them a taste of his processed products, the soy sauce and the beer. The guild staff immediately regain their spirits, eager to sample the new food items he developed from his harvest. Masato serves them sashimi and instructs them to dip the sliced fish fillet into the dark seasoning liquid. The old man is intrigued by the strange but delicious salty-sweet aroma wafting from the small dish. He tastes it and realizes the soy sauce contains ultrafuranone, an aromatic compound with powerful health benefits against cancer. Carol takes a bite and screams in delight, unable to comprehend how raw fish can taste this incredible. The appraiser declares this the beginning of a soy sauce era, claiming the taste is revolutionary compared to their standard salts. They enthusiastically ask for the origin of the premium quality fish, unaware of the danger involved in catching it. Masato casually reveals it is a kraken from the Vialang Sea, causing their faces to pale in horror. They panic that he is eating a disaster-level monster, but Masato simply states he plans to catch more because it is tasty. Moving to the next course, Masato serves the cold beer and promises to cast a detox spell if they get too drunk. The 2 guild members take a hesitant sip of the golden liquid, their eyes widening as they drink. The appraiser marvels at the smooth texture, declaring he has never experienced a drink like this in his life. Carol is amazed by the refreshing chill, realizing that without refrigerators, such a cold drink is a rare luxury. The appraiser feels like he is dining in a high-class restaurant, while Masato mentally plans to increase production. Carol asks how the soy sauce is made, and Masato explains it involves fermenting wheat and soybeans with microorganisms. She is stunned that he possesses knowledge of biology and microorganisms, asking if he discovered a new species. Masato informs the receptionist that Cole won't return for 3 weeks, so he plans to sell wheat next time while increasing soy sauce and beer production. Taking advantage of his recent earnings, he decides to repay his property loan early and requests to purchase another batch of wheat and soybean seeds. The receptionist looks surprised by his sudden arrival and request, stammering as she welcomes him to the counter. She expresses relief and joy that he is able to repay the loan so quickly. Masato reflects on the stress of the Wyvern circulation card before triumphantly declaring that the factory land is now officially his property. Turning to the spirits, he announces his intention to borrow their powers again to immediately plant the newly purchased seeds in the field. Since the soil is already tilled, he prepares to toss the seeds using his dexterity status for perfect distribution. With a swift motion, he scatters the wheat and soybeans, splitting them evenly across the land to the amazement of the watching spirits. He requests the accelerator rain from the spirits, who eagerly agree to handle the task for him. With the work finished for the day, Masato calls out to the celebrating spirits that it is getting late and they should head back for dinner. Walking through the town, he decides to use the tomato, eggs, and wheat flour he bought at the market for tonight's meal. Upon returning home, a small spirit quickly hushes him, signaling for quiet as he steps through the door. Masato pauses in the hallway, confused by the sudden need for silence as he enters the room. He discovers Himari fast asleep on the sofa, looking completely exhausted from her recent exertions. Masato gazes down at her sleeping form, noticing how peaceful she looks under the starlight. He realizes with a pang of guilt that she has been pushing herself too hard to help him. Recalling his own past as a corporate slave, he resolves not to create an exploitative environment for her since she is not a specialized combatant. He decides to let her sleep and quietly prepares the food so as not to disturb her rest. Masato begins cooking waterless tomato pasta, confusing the spirit who wonders how pasta can be made without water. He explains the process of mixing flour and salt with a wet mixture of egg and olive oil to create the dough. After slicing the rolled dough into thin strips, he uses a time manipulator to speed up the required 2-hour resting period. Using advanced alchemy, he constructs a makeshift pressure cooker to handle the cooking process. He places minced garlic, a whole tomato, and the fresh noodles into the pot and turns on the heat. He explains that the waterless pasta will boil in the moisture released by the ingredients, allowing the tomato flavor to thoroughly seep into the noodles. The savory aroma wafts through the room, causing Himari's eyes to snap open despite her deep slumber. Masato turns to see Himari sitting up on the couch, staring intently at his back as he cooks. Her stomach growls loudly as she stares at the food with a flushed, hungry expression. Masato is shocked by her sudden awakening, but she cheerfully bids him good morning. Himari laughs and asks how she could possibly stay asleep when such a delicious smell is filling the room. She claims dragons only need to sleep once a year and apologizes for troubling him, but insists she just needed a little nap. Masato smiles with relief, realizing that he was needlessly worried about her well-being. He invites her to take a seat at the table because the food is just about ready to serve. The plates are set down, and Himari's eyes sparkle as she exclaims that the pasta looks incredibly delicious. Masato sprinkles cheese and herbs on top, and they both give thanks for the meal before digging in. Himari takes a bite and squeals in delight, noting that the tomato flavor has seeped into everything. Masato is pleased with the noodles' bounciness but wonders if he can sell the dish since pressure cookers don't exist in this world. They enjoy the meal together in the warm atmosphere of their home, savoring the fruits of their labor. Masato suggests boiling some edamame for an evening drink, and Himari enthusiastically agrees to the treat. Himari swears that everything grown in his field tastes amazing, prompting Masato to remember something important. He asks her if she will come with him to the field next time. He reveals that the alchemic mushroom should be fully grown and ready for harvest very soon. Masato calls out to his companion, searching the area for the small dragon girl who has seemingly vanished from sight. Himari suddenly appears from the sky above him, asking cheerfully if he is finally ready to depart. Startled by her voice coming from the air, Masato looks up in confusion to locate the hovering fairy. He realizes too late that the koji mold has multiplied uncontrollably, trapping him inside the greenhouse with a wall of fungus. Bursting out of the greenhouse in a mess of spores, he sheepishly admits he just wanted to increase soy sauce production. Recovering from the fungal avalanche, Masato apologizes and points her toward the correct greenhouse where the medicinal mushroom awaits. Himari asks if the delicate fungus can survive outside, to which Masato assures her that only the growing environment requires strict control. He presents the fully grown alchemic mushroom to her, declaring that the wait is finally over. Himari stares at the legendary cure in her hands, her eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and hope. The mushrooms glow with a mystical light, standing as a silent testament to the miracle they have achieved. Overcome with emotion, she trembles as the reality of saving her mother finally sinks in. Masato smiles gently and assures her that just a single one of these potent mushrooms is enough to create the cure. Himari declares she will handle the final compounding herself and asks Masato how he usually prepares medicines. Masato imagines a fantasy style which stirring a cauldron, but Himari quickly shatters his stereotypical expectation. She utilizes modern-looking laboratory equipment like beakers and funnels to extract the essence with scientific precision. Misato watches in stunned silence, unable to comprehend the level of chemistry happening in a fantasy world. He observes her professional technique, realizing this process is far more advanced than anything he anticipated. Himari focuses intensely as she uses a dropper to mix the volatile ingredients with absolute steadiness. Watching her dexterity, Misato muses that if he had studied this hard in university, he might have avoided his black company life. A sudden, pungent stench fills the air, causing Misato to freeze as his survival instincts scream danger. Himari casually casts a wide-range detox spell, obliterating the deadly fumes in an instant. She laughs off her mistake of creating poison gas, forgetting that unlike dragons, humans are not immune to lethal toxins. Terrified by her lack of safety standards, Misato activates master-level architecture to instantly construct a fume hood. He sternly orders the dragon girl to continue her dangerous experiments inside the ventilation device for his own safety. 3 hours later, Misato slumps against the wall, realizing his high stats are the only reason he survived the chemical exposure. Himari cheerfully holds up the completed vial, announcing that the life-saving elixir is finally finished. Exhausted from the work, she gulps down a drink Misato prepared, looking for refreshment. She praises the hearty drink, while Misato mentally notes that he did not give her an energy drink. With the cure in hand, Himari asks Misato to accompany her so she can introduce him to her mother. Misato accepts the invitation immediately, eager to see more of this world while helping her complete her quest. They travel to a freezing, snow-covered mountain, where Misato is grateful his high vitality renders him immune to the cold. Trudging through the snow, he admits to himself that he would be hopelessly lost in this terrain without her guidance. A blinding light suddenly erupts from the forest ahead, catching Misato completely off guard. He stares in awe at a massive tree glowing with vibrant, shifting rainbow colors amidst the white snow. Himari explains that this modified tree species was a failed attempt by her mother to create a substitute for the cure. She points out the massive beehives hanging from it, noting that the failed experiment at least produced interesting byproducts. Misato looks at the tree with newfound respect, realizing Himari's mother fought desperately for her life until the very end. They finally arrive at the mouth of a dark cave, the final destination of their journey. Himari gestures toward the interior where a bed lies, introducing the sleeping figure as her mother. Misato looks upon the slumbering ancient dragon in her human form, struck by the peacefulness of her expression. Himari approaches the bed, her voice trembling as she realizes her mother has finally returned to consciousness. Overcome with emotion, Himari clasps her hands together while tears well up in her eyes. She tenderly holds her mother's hand, confirming that it has indeed been a long time since they last spoke. Misato observes that although she is awake, the white mage's disease has unfortunately robbed the dragon of her eyesight. He explains that by keeping her in human form, he can minimize the strain on her body from the treatment device. Misato admits this is his best attempt, but 10 years of life support is barely a blink in the lifespan of a dragon. Himari's mother senses something is amiss and hesitantly asks what is actually wrong with the situation. Himari declares with absolute confidence that her mother will be cured because Misato has created a miracle medicine. The mother is left speechless, her mouth agape in sheer shock at the impossibility of the claim. Misato calmly explains that he simply synthesized the cure according to theory, leaving Himari's mother bewildered by his casualness. Himari introduces Misato as the benefactor who cultivated the legendary Alchemy mushroom required for the cure. The mother is stunned to learn that a mere human farmer was capable of cultivating such a mythical ingredient. Misato acknowledges the shock but urges them to focus on the treatment lying before them. Himari holds the vial of medicine and gently pleads with her mother to drink the contents. Trusting her daughter, the mother tilts her head back and swallows the medicine in one large gulp. Her eyes snap open in disbelief as her vision instantly clears and returns to full functionality. Misato immediately performs a follow-up test, drawing a blood sample to confirm the eradication of the disease. He checks the results and announces that the test is negative, confirming she is completely cured. Misato muses that the rapid recovery is similar to injecting adrenaline for anaphylaxis, marveling at the medicine's speed. Overwhelmed with relief, Himari and her mother share a tight, tearful embrace in the hospital bed. The mother apologizes for causing so much worry, while Himari weeps tears of pure joy at her recovery. Turning to Misato, the mother bows her head to thank him for saving her life and apologizes for her earlier doubts. She observes the spirits around him and realizes with awe that he has even managed to tame dryads. Masato explains that he met Himari by chance in the forest when she carried him to town, which started their friendship. He smiles and tells Himari that thanks to that chance encounter, he was the one who was ultimately saved. The mother recalls his profession and asks for confirmation that he is indeed a farmer. She asks him to follow her outside, believing she has the perfect reward for someone of his talents. Masato stares up at the sky in confusion, asking what exactly he is looking at. The mother presents a massive floating continent, declaring it his reward for cultivating the mushroom. She instructs him to try stepping onto it, though Masato is baffled about how to use such a thing. Checking his status, Masato sees he has 10,500 MP and decides to pour magic into the artifact. He activates the stone with 5,000 MP, causing the magic circle to glow intensely beneath his feet. A massive beam of light erupts into the sky, signaling the activation of the floating land. Masato panics, fearing he put in too much magic and might have buried the mountain and cave. The mother explains that while it looks small outside, the internal dimensions expand massively when supplied with magic. Masato hesitates, asking if it is really okay for him to accept such a powerful and valuable item. The mother smiles and reveals that the floating continent is not the only reward she intends to give him. She presents a glowing seed, entrusting him with the seed of a world tree as the perfect gift for a dryad tamer. The spirits cheer enthusiastically about raising the world tree, while Masato is left stunned by the magnitude of the gift. She explains that the world tree has the highest affinity for dryads and produces special fruits. She adds that the tree will help the spirits reach greater heights, leaving Masato to wonder what that implies. Masato decides to plant it immediately, and to his surprise, it sprouts the moment it touches the soil. A spirit explains that Masato used a 3-month growth accelerant, speeding up a process that normally takes a century. The mother watches them with a smile, insisting that no amount of gifts could ever repay him for saving her life. Masato humbly brushes off the praise while the spirits excitedly dance around the sprouting seedling. He wipes sweat from his brow, acknowledging that he has received some truly amazing items today. Smiling at the vast potential before him, he realizes he can now plant all the crops he has been dreaming of. Gazing out over the landscape, he expresses his excitement to see what the future holds for his new farm. However, panic sets in as he wonders how on earth he is going to explain the floating continent to Carol.